Hey, this is PupTub. I'm going to be going over my workflow on the Polyend Play, and we'll be talking about my external gear just briefly to put things into context. We'll also go over how I arrange my songs in the pattern mode, how they're sequenced, and then I'm going to talk about chance and randomize up here. Most of my songs are very deterministic. The melodies are written, the drums are written, but I do throw in some chance and randomization in there. If not during composition, I do have them in there as they play through their loop. So we'll go over that, and then I'm going to go over the performance mode, how I play things live. Yeah. So to start, we have the Minilogue XD over here, and I'm going to bring up the MIDI, and I'm going to play you the patches that I use for pretty much this entire project file. And the theory here is that I only stick to a couple patches per instrument. The idea is so that you have a cohesive sound and a style. You have a PupTub voice, and you don't get too lost and have songs that sound completely different from each other. So yeah. So to start, we have the 303 at the top, and the 303, very much the 303 sound. That is the Cyclone analogic TT-303. That is what it does, so it doesn't change. So it's very much like my like playing with a person that's playing guitar or bass guitar or whatever it is. That's the instrument, and that's how it's going to sound. Generally speaking, we'll adjust the parameters live, but that's how it's going to sound. The second row here is the circuit tracks, which is playing the chord progressions that I've programmed in. And these chord progressions are fed into the Hologram Microcosm. Let's listen to that. And you can hear the microcosm on there. And let's send just the dry signal. Okay, so that's just the circuit tracks, and the Polyend Play has sequenced those chords to play. As you add in the microcosm, it starts doing the bit crushing, resampling, pitch shifting, and then this lush reverb here, which sounds great. Down here, I have the Minilogue sound. So that's what that sounds like. And the way I think about it in my head, because I play guitar and I played in a band, is the Minilogue is like the low end of a guitar, or like a bass guitar somewhat. But I do have also a bass line mapped out on the Polyend Play. And the reason why I have this bass line on the Polyend Play, and I also have this Minilogue doing a bass line, is that the Minilogue is has this chance parameter that's a 50% chance random octave up. I really like the sound of that, but what happens is when it jumps up an octave, it can feel kind of strange to have the that low end sort of drop. And if I want to use that chance, then I don't want that feeling where the low end drops out to occur. So I have this bass line here on the Polyend Play. It's set to skip the first time through the loop and then play the second time through the loop. And yeah, so no matter how much the octaves jump on this Minilogue, I still have that foundation of a bass down there. Yeah, and the idea is that each one of these is like a person in a band, and I'm jamming with them, and they're doing some improvisation, but not much. So, for example, each one of these has a chance to do a random octave up, and in a band you'll sometimes be playing a part, but you'll want to just do a slight improvisation, like a tasteful improvisation, and oftentimes that could just be an octave change, and by having each one of these have some kind of chance to octave change, you get that feel as if it's an organic band with several members doing things at the same time, and it's changing as it goes. So that's how I have the that's the theory as far as like the external instruments, and they're sequenced here in the MIDI mode. I'll probably talk more about that in a bit. This is the sequencer for the Polyend samples themselves, and basically how that works is you have a project file that you load. That project file holds 250-ish samples, and you put samples into folders, and then when you initially load that project file, it's going to load all that into the buffer memory so that it can recall that really fast. And then it can do sample flipping, and I'll show you all that kind of stuff. So you can select your voices here. How I have this arranged is kick drum on the top row, snare, hi-hat, and then shaker, and then the bass line. The Polyend plays per step for sampling and for parameters and everything, so really you could have all instruments all over the place, but because I don't have it written down per se what each thing is, I want to have a workflow where I know that if I'm selecting the top row, I'm just selecting the kick drum. I'm selecting snare, the second row it's the snare, and that way I can make changes across that whole voice. Of course, you can always manually select things like this, but I imagine that would be crazy if you're having to select snares like across the whole thing. So yeah, that's how I typically have it arranged here. Going into chants here. Let's see, do I have anything? So I think I mentioned that the bass line, it skips one, then it plays one. There's another way to sequence that out. So there's 16 steps visible right now. It goes up to 64. This one here, this is that glitchy melody. I have this in 64 in a step sequence of 64 because I want it to not play anything the first 16, not play anything the second 16, play a melody the third 16, and then continue with that melody on the fourth. I could do it like this, where I tell it to skip one, play one, but you can only have one chance active at a time. So if I wanted to have the chance to round it octave up or down on here, I wouldn't be able to have the skip one, play one. So you get one chance, you get one type of chance to put on there at a time. So oftentimes it's better to actually just map out your melody in the context of the full 64 so that you leave this open for some sort of chance. So I mentioned that I usually have this bass here on the Polyend play that keeps it grounded while the other instruments will jump various octaves. This one, wait, is it this one? No, this is this row is the glitching one. This row is the bass, and I have a repeat on it, which means, and it's set to 2 steps. So for each one of these squares, for each one of these steps, it will play 2 hits, and that's an octave. So we can turn that off, and then it just sounds like as it goes through the loop. And then as we add in the octave, and this is a very common thing I do, it sounds like that. And it kind of reminds me of like a video game type of thing, or like walking up the bass line doing octaves, like on a bass guitar. And I do that a lot with the bass samples that I have on the Polyend play. Let's see, octaves. Okay, let's go to the next part of the song, and let me just show you how it works. So like in the pattern mode, I have the part 1, part 2, part 3 here. The way I have this arranged in pattern mode, so like we have these rows, and this is the first row, second row, third, fourth, and so on. I'll have a song arranged just like how it is here, where it's like part 1, 2, 3. Then when there's an unlit square, that delineates the end of this song and then the beginning of another song. So you can see that I'll have like a song here, and then there's space, which means that this is a new song. The only exception to that rule is like there's a line that's like, in my mind, this is spaces. So like here's a grid, and once you get to the end, this is the end of this song. Then you have a new song here, and then this song, and this is the end. So it doesn't keep going over to these. So it's 8 by 8 grid, 8 by 8 grid. And the reason for that is that there's not much real estate. It's not free real estate, and I want to cram as much in here as I can, because I want to be able to play a set without any downtime, without being interrupted and having silence. The Polyend play takes a while to load a project file, especially one like this that has patterns all over the place and maxed out on the samples. And that's because it's loading everything into the buffer memory and needs quick access to the samples for the flipping and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so if I want to play a set and I want to be able to just seamlessly go from one thing to the next for the most part, I want to fill this up. And if I'm using unlit squares to separate these songs, then I'm losing that real estate. So I just remember that I have that line in between. So then we have 2 songs per row on this square, and 2 songs per row basically on this square. So it's like 16 songs on the left, 16 songs on the right, and it's like about an hour and a half or so of music, depending on how much I jam or improv or whatever. Yeah, so going from left to right is how it works, and when I go from one pattern to the next, it will, like if I cue up this one, it will play that where it makes sense to play instead of interrupting it. So this is what this sounds like. Cue up the next one. See, it's blinking. It's going to wait till that's done. Now it's into the next part. And most of the song is pretty similar, except the drum. There's major changes to the drum pattern there. And then I'll play this, and then I'll go to the third part. I don't know why I paused it right there, but so we're queuing up the third. The third one is often a techno sort of kick on every 4. And that's like how I like to exit out of my songs. So I'll do the intro thing, and then into a more like IDM kind of drumming in the middle, and then into like more of just a standard 4 on the floor type kick. And then because I have that general way of organizing the song structures, I know that the end to a lot of these is going to be that kind of 4 on the floor, and then like the middle is going to be that more maybe jungly or I don't know how you want to explain it, drum track. On the other project file I have, it's very standard that way, and that way I can stay within a certain drum style if I want. So if it calls for that kick every 4 and we're in that zone and we can stay there, we can go through my entire all my songs in that style. And then if we're doing like the breaks, jungly break stuff, I can just pull in those the segments of those tracks, so I could go through all the stuff that I have, but in the style that I want to stay in. If it's just me, if I don't have any constraints on the style, I'll just move through each part and just play it all. So yeah, that's how the pattern mode is organized. Let's look at the chance algorithm on some stuff. Let's go to this middle one. So chance, what do we have? So one chance I'll use is random sample in. I'll use that on the snare, and that shrinks the snare hit length down to these real snappy hits. And then occasionally, it'll play the entire snare length. I'll also oftentimes use I'll shrink the length of it manually that way, and then I'll even put a chance to have a sample end at various points of that. So it's keeping the snare hits really tight. For hi-hat, oftentimes I'll do a randomize on the volume. So if we're listening to that, I'll increase the percentage of change on the volume. And this is on the randomize. So there's chance and there's randomize. And the difference is that chance will change every time through the loop. So in real time, every time through the loop, it is doing a random thing to it that you select here. On the randomize, you're increasing the percentage, and then it stays that way. So it's one and done. It stays that way on that until you were to change the type. And I'll talk about that more in a second. But I usually use the volume randomizer on the hi-hat just to give it some variation, make it feel more organic. I also have the shaker here. It looks like I used some randomization on this volume too. Let's see, chance, skip one. That's kind of all there is to that on this one. Well, let's go through the different chance algorithms we have here. So we have random micro tune. It's going to pitch shift in micro amounts. Random cutoff. That's another one to that helps shorten the length of samples, and sometimes we'll use that for the snare hit. Random repeat. So there's certain things I don't use on the Polyend play because the scale filter is a thing that applies to the project file globally and not per pattern. So the issue there is that I'll have this this song here. It's in a key in a certain scale, but then I'll have another song here, which is in a different key, different scale. So I can't apply a scale filter to everything, and so I can't use certain things like random repeat. And random repeat will cycle through the different repeat types here, which we have straight, fade, raise, pong, arp, alien, echo, all these. One of them is, or a couple of them are outside of the, or maybe it's not here, but there's a few that basically will select random, octaves. There you go. This will select random notes from within an octave, and if you don't have a scale filter on, then you're just, playing notes that aren't in key, and it's not going to sound good. So I don't get to use that. Random sample start is another one. If I have a vocal sample, I can just put a whole bunch of squares down of that, a whole bunch of steps of that vocal sample. I can put it like a row and set it to sample start, and then another row and set it to sample end, and that sounds pretty interesting. So that's one thing I'll do there. And then humanize, I have that on maybe one track, and you're basically making it sound like a human that's not quantized. So there's imperfect hits, imperfect places of the notes, either micro moved ahead or behind where they would be if they were quantized. Simulating the human. Let's see, what are some other ones that I have in here? Mostly it's just random octave up, and that's because I'm very deterministic with how I plan write this out, and I don't like a whole lot of variation. But let's talk about before we go into changing, moving patterns around live and improving that way. Let's talk about the randomize here. So we went through the chance already. That was all of these, and the randomize that I use. It's a lot of it's for when I'm coming up with ideas or writing a song. Some of it I use live. So okay, let me turn that down on the Minilogue. There we go. So we have random sample in folder. Let's pull in just the drum, kick drum, voice, and we're going to select that. So this is the only one playing. We can increase this randomize, and what that's doing is using basically how it's set up in the folder structure. And how that works is you will create folders, and you will put and you'll name it like kick or snare or hi-hat, etc. And you'll put all of your kicks in the kick one, all of your snares, and so forth. And the reason you do that is so that you can use this randomize sample and folder. When I crank this up, it is flipping samples, but it's choosing from that folder. So it's choosing from the kick folder. So you don't get anything that's like nonsense. And there you can hear like the kick drum is actually switched out to other samples. And you can do that per line. You can also add in the snare and the hi-hat. And then for all these, you're going to be randomizing the samples in their folder. But you know the snare one is only going to flip with other snares, and the hi-hat's only going to swap out other hi-hats, and the kick other kicks. So it's done in a way that really makes sense. It's nice, and that's what that sounds like. The sample in pool. So this is it is pretty wild because you're grabbing samples from the entire pool of the ones that you have on this project file. So like if you have 250, you are going to be swapping that sample with one of those in the 250. What that sounds like here. So this is without it, and then as we increase, and yeah, so it's pulling from that pool. One of the cool things that's going on here with sample and folder and sample and pool is that you're conserving the parameter settings for each step and only swapping out the samples. So like if you have something panned to the left or panned to the right, or you have the melody written out and you have the notes already set, it's not going to change the notes. It's not going to change the panning, the overdrive, the bit depth, the sample start, any of that. It's just going to be swapping out samples. So that's really nice if you have everything the way you want it as far as the parameters, and you just want to swap the samples out. We have sample length and texture. So with randomization of the texture, basically what you're randomizing is the overdrive, bit depth, panning, sample start, cutoff resonance, and it's a little bit harder to tell. Let me try it with just these. Okay, so here's the existing track. And basically it's just adding more panning, more or less, bit crushing, more or less of all those things. You can put it back down. Next one up is 1 octave. The 1 octave one had me confused because when I first got the Polyend Play, I would randomize things within 1 octave, thinking that it was shifting the notes up in an octave or down an octave, and then I would be playing the song back later on, and I would realize that I would hear notes that weren't in key, and was wondering like if I had just messed something up when I was programming it or what. And it took me quite a while actually to realize that that I was pulling random notes from within the octave, and that goes back to the scale filter, which is applied globally or applied not at all. And so I don't use a scale filter, so it's just pulling in the notes that don't fit the scale. 2 octaves is within 2 octaves. Volume, I think we showed, or I can't remember if we showed that, but I'll use that on the hi-hat. Sometimes I use that on the snares too, because it'll sound weird to just have exact copies of the snare hits, but you randomize some of the volume. That's nice. Makes it sound more organic. The space is basically just randomizing. I think it's just randomizing the reverb and the delay. I don't use this that much because I don't use delay all that much. I'll use like a repeat, or for like a ratchety sound, or like I'll use reverb, but I don't use the delay that much. The delays and reverbs, those are master effects. So you have to think about think about it in a broad way, where you're choosing a reverb that you want to use on the most amount of tracks you have, because that's the effect you're going to use, and you can then dial in the percentage of reverb on whatever step you want. Same with the delay, and so I have it set to this particular one, but I'm not sold on it. I think eventually I need to go back through and pick another delay. But there's also the delays and the reverbs on the performance mode. Those, of course, only work while performance mode is activated. Once you go out of performance mode, it's no longer there. So you can't save it to the Polyend play, but it is cool to have for performance. But while I'm in the Master Effects, it's something I should mention is the sound sounds good. Whatever the default setting that is that it comes with, I did not think it sounded good. It just did not sound great to me. So surprisingly, the sounds good sounds good. So there's some other ones here. But yeah, I just keep it at sounds good. You might want to play with that. So if something just sounds kind of flat or thin, go in there and change that. I have the sidechain set to track 1, which is the kick, saturation to soft clip. So that's what I have working on there. The reverb I have is pretty intense. It's the space one, of course, and I will add like 10% to snares. Not much to the hi-hat. Sometimes I add some to the hi-hat. Oftentimes I have like reverb drift, where I just keep adding more and more reverb, and I have to go back here and just zero it all out and then apply it. Each time I play live, I kind of save it as the state that it was when I was playing it live. So whatever weird stuff I was doing, some of that stuff is gone because it's performance mode, or I undo it live. But other things, like if I add a bunch of reverb or something on the way out of a track, sometimes I have to go dial that back. All right. Next up we have nuke. So nuke is the combination of sample and folder, and like some of these others like texture. Basically with the nuke, you are swapping out the samples within their respective folders, but you're also randomizing the overdrive, bit depth, sample start, and cutoff, resonance, attack, decay. And so you're doing all that, and really it's such a fast way to randomize, to like adjust those parameters. If you think about it, if you're trying to come up with a good mix of parameters of like panning and these other things, and you're doing that in a Groovebox, you're usually like selecting like one step, and then you're adjusting each parameter, and then another step, and then adjusting each parameter. But with the randomize, you can select all your snares, for example, and then you can just do the nuke, and it's randomizing all those parameters, including the samples. So it's a really quick way to just, you can go from like 0 to a rather complicated song pretty fast. One thing to note is that when you're nuking it, you are also randomizing the overdrive. This is important for a couple reasons, especially live. If you have, even if you don't have different volumes per step, let's say you have all your steps set to a particular volume, if you nuke some of your steps here, some of them will receive an overdrive that's pretty loud. So if you, and I didn't realize this until I was playing live, and I was using randomize on the nuke, and then especially the Duke nuke, because Duke nuke is randomly selecting from all of the samples on the Polyend play, and so some of those samples are going to be loud or obnoxious, or like they already sound kind of hot, and then you combine that with the fact that you might roll the dice and get an overdrive that's pretty high, and then you add the fact that it might happen to come on a step that's already has a higher volume than other steps. Then when those three things align, you're sort of unlucky, and it can be pretty jarring, pretty loud. One thing you can do is you can crank the Duke or the Nuke all the way up, and then turn the overdrive all the way down right after that, so that it returns to that. So even if you might have some like loud samples, at least you're taking the overdrive off of that. If we go back to this one, and let's just go to the Polyend play voices here. What that ends up sounding like is like, let's turn the Duke Nuke up. We're gonna save it. Then we're gonna go to overdrive, and we're gonna turn that down to 0. And now we just applied all the other Duke Nukem parameter changes, but we quickly, turn that overdrive off. That's the workaround that I've come up with. I wish we could alter which things were randomized within these things. So like if I could take overdrive out of the Duke Nuke and out of the Nuke, so that it's randomizing everything but that would be fantastic. And then if you apply these things, you can always undo, and then you're back to that. Okay. So we covered the chance and the random. Those I use the most. So let's talk about the performance modes, and then how I will iterate on some of these written out melodies. Performance mode looks like this, and these are all the ways that you can be editing your voices live. This is how you select the voices that you want to be altering. So if you want to just alter the kick, you would have that altered. With performance mode, a lot of the things like the reverb and delays and things like that, I will not apply that to the kick. I'll apply it to everything else but the kick. And again, that's so that there's something still grounded, something keeping the song going. Because if you're adding some wild delay or wild reverb onto something, the kick is loud enough, and it will just synergize with that, and it'll just be like crazy. So this pink one here is the looper, and this is like kind of like an analog looper where it doesn't loop like quantized perfectly in. I think it's just like it depends on the accuracy of your ability to press it, accurately in time. So to give this a demo here, we'll just be selecting the Polyend play, voices only, and now we can use this. So you can either press and hold, or you can press and then press again to turn off. Right side is going to be panning, and then left side is not panned. I will use the bottom ones to make that ratchety glitch sound. I don't use these top ones all that much, but I should. I'll also use pitch shift everything. So like, let's say I have everything selected on the Polyend play, and we're playing this. Let me go and mute the HAL 9000 there. I'll pitch it like up, and then I'll use one of these rearrange. And there's that like it just reminds me of Mario coins or Sonic rings. Just real quick while I'm thinking about this, that melody that you're hearing, I believe it's this. Yeah, has a 50% chance to go up. It also has octaves on it, 4 hits. So that's what's giving you that like video gamey sort of Mario coin sound. Yeah. So let's see, back to performance mode. Yeah, so I can just be, I can just select that melody, and then if we're playing the song here, I can pitch shift it up, maybe put a freeze delay on it. I could shift it down. I could put this metal head on there and maybe big hall reverb. I really like that combo. This metal head is just really nice. You can do stereo trip, which is a more typical delay. A nice combo I like to do is the twoism and the P's, or just the P's. It just sounds like really granular little bouncy little P's bouncing around. And then of course you can grab everything, combine the pitch shifting. Honestly, it's a lot of fun. There's these are called repeats, and to me they sound like they're not on beat for some reason. Maybe I just don't know how to use them correctly. Maybe someone can explain it to me, but like going down, actually, it not only does it repeat in that sequence, but it also shifts the pitch to do like a downward way, and then going up. I don't know, so it's kind of cool. So that's performance mode. You can combine randomize with performance mode. You just have to remember to, whatever you want, whatever performance edits you want to make, you do those first and then do the randomize. So, like let's say we're just doing this one. And let's say we pitch shift it down, we give it that metal head, and then we do the reverb there. And let's say we also do a repeat on it. Then we can go here and we can go to Duke Nuke, and we could change sample flipping and all those parameters. Add in the other instruments. Do a different rearrange. Pitch shift up. Maybe add some overdrive to hear it, bring it, let it pop out of the mix a little better. Yeah. So, yeah, you can do combos with randomize and performance mode. There was a fun thing that I was doing for a while where I was like spamming Nuke and Duke Nuke. I'm not going to do it here because I don't want to make this terrible glitchy noise happen, but apparently it glitches out in a not good way, because I'd be like spinning this knob and then I would be spamming all these performance notes and just making it go nuts, and I feel like it's like some memory issue or something, and it just like it gets stuck in a loud ratcheting repeat, and the only way to get out of it is to like yank the power cable out. They may have fixed it. I don't even want to try it to see if it's still in there. Hopefully they fix it, or it's just my machine. Yeah, so hopefully they do fix that. There's some other things in here, like the pattern fills. I think I'll save that for the next video. One thing I did want to show is how to take an existing melody that you wrote and then alter the length and shift the movement around to get new melodies from that. So like I'll write like one melody up to 64 steps, and let's see if I have one already doing this. Okay, so let's see on this one. So notice it was a set originally to this 7, and often that's how I like to do my 303 sounds, is put it at an odd, like don't put it at a 4, 8, or 16, put it at like a 7, 3, or 5, 12, 13, put it at a 15, so every time through the loop of 16, you know, it's starting slightly ahead or behind, depending on how you look at it. What I initially did with this melody is I wrote like a longer melody. I guess only 16 for this one. And then what I can do is I can always shrink the melody and then I have like a new melody, and it's looped in an odd way, and it sounds cool. The other thing to do is to move. So when you're moving it, you're like moving these. See how the squares move? Those are you're shifting the whole pattern. And honestly, it sounds pretty cool. And then from there, you know, I can increase the length here. Then I can undo and go back to the way it was. And that's how, like, I'll have one melody and I get all sorts of other melodies from that. The other thing you can do is, so let's go back to using up or exposing all 16 notes. You can choose the play here. You could do a reverse if you want. First steps. So like one thing to do if you need ideas is you can just enter every note in a scale on these 16 steps, then use a play mode to create melodies out of that. And you can have a different play mode per row. So each one of these rows could have a different play mode. And you could have a song where most of the song is you just enter in the scale straight in there, and then you use the play modes to determine how the melody is going to sound. So you're not just running through the scale like a robot. You know, it's jumping around and doing a cool pattern. Double step. Honestly, sounds pretty cool. If you are trying to have variations longer than 64 steps, a workaround I have is both of these are the Minilogue, and but one time through the 64 it needs to be dialed into one chord, and then the other, and then I need it to change when it reaches to this chord on the circuit tracks. I need to I need to have it dialed in for that chord. So I only have 64 to work with on one row, so I'll put 1 on this row and tell it to play once and then skip the second time. And then for this one, I tell it to skip once and play the second time. And then I have a, for all intents and purposes, I have a 128 step long sequence where it plays this and then it plays this one, and it lines up with the chords behind it. So since you can skip, I think all the way up through 4, I guess you could do 364, and then if you add in 2 more rows, we're talking whatever that is, 768. So yeah, it gets kind of wild when you start thinking about how you can use multiple rows to program something in. Okay, so we did the sample length, the movement shifting there. We did the pattern mode. We did the sequencing. I think what I'll do now is I'll just jam a track and show how I jam it out and like move from one thing to the next, and yeah, we'll call it. I think I'll do like the composition thing in another video. Yeah, I want to say thanks to Mikey303 for requesting this video many months ago, and I agreed to do it and have been wanting to do it, but I've been waiting for like my living room to be quiet enough to record this video, because where I do all my streaming or my music stuff, it's in a shared space, and I just have headphones on. I don't have a mic on, so I'm just listening to stuff, and the mic is not on, so it's not picking anything up. But with this, I needed the mic on, of course, to do the video, so it took me some months to get it done. Yeah, so thanks, Mikey, and thanks for watching. Hopefully this helped you all out. I'm sure I missed something. Like, I'm still trying to think if I missed something in here, but nothing comes to mind. So so I love you all, and yeah, let's jam.